And we're live. It's February. Happy, let's see, we had the New Year's yesterday, Year of the Tiger, I believe. It's Groundhog Day. Hey, Joseph. Thanks, everyone who joins us regularly. Thank you if you're here for the first time. This hour every week, SupConnect lets me, Kristen Thomas, chat with interesting people in the world of paddling about all kinds of different topics. We have a local favorite today. Rob Rojas is well known. He started paddling way before me. First outrigger, but stand up he was in the early days, and he's a great storyteller. So we're going to talk about kind of some of the things about the early days, but also just a lover of paddling in all ways. Originally a collegiate swimmer. I believe he's from California. I know he went to school out of state, but we'll find that out momentarily. Thanks again to everyone. Remember this, although it's live, which is great, and we're thrilled you're here. You can also catch this immediately on IGTV on SupConnect, and then we'll have it within a day or two on both SupConnect's YouTube and my YouTube, KT Outside. So send your friends who didn't get a chance if there's something of interest, which hopefully there always is. Fun to see all of you. Love you to check in, ask questions if you'd like for Rob, who started paddling again in the early 2000s, so way back. And there he is. So it's so funny. Oh, he was, Susie. I forgot. Did I know that? He was a video natador. Susie just said you were a natador. I don't know if I knew that or not.
I am a natador at heart. Yeah.
Well, then we probably swam in the same pool. I'm older than you, but our high school used that as their swimming pool. Capo Valley didn't have a swimming pool when it opened. So we swam with the natadors. And I know Susie was a diver, so we've talked about that. So sorry, folks, if you don't know what we're talking about. But huge local swimming powerhouse for many decades, the Mission Viejo Natadors. And I knew you were a great collegiate swimmer, but I guess I had never asked where you started.
Yeah, Mission Viejo. Yeah, started off at South Coast Aquatics, and then went to Mission Viejo Natadors, and counted the black line. I was a distance swimmer, so distance swimmers are, I guess, swimmers that don't sprint very well, and that obviously that transferred into my paddling,
Hey, your nephew Riley says, "Hey, that's my uncle. He's on." Cheers. But I'm thrilled to have you on. I mean, you always have so many good stories and such a good memory and there's so many people. This really was a hub early on for stand-up paddling. Hey. And you're also funny, so I'm sure we're going to get a lot of that.
Gonna be propping some things up here. There we go. All right. Need that water bottle is good for something. There we go. All right.
So where did the water thing start? You were a swimmer from what age? Do you have a water family, or how'd you get started in swimming first, it sounds like?
Well, believe it or not, I vividly remember almost drowning when I was a toddler.
Wow.
So my family, we lived in Spain, and
oh, cool.
And I remember I was wearing an inner tube, and I had a pair of swim fins on my feet, and I was probably, I would say, maybe 4 years old. And I vividly remember flipping over, not being able to breathe, and the lady who was watching me, she was on it. I mean, she was like, it felt like an eternity, but I remember seeing her black and white checkered pants as she was, jumping into the pool. Mrs. Storin, that was her name. And
wow.
Total vivid memory. But ever since then, I'd always just gotten into swimming. My sister, I owe a lot of it to my sister, Mary Ellen. She's the one that got me into the pool. My elementary school was right above her high school, and she just said, "Hey, come on down. I'll go through all the 4 strokes with you and all that stuff." And then it just took off from there. So,
thanks to your sister. That's cool.
Yeah,
hey.
Absolutely. No, totally. And then of course, my parents, my mom and, my dad, my mom, doing the whole Mission Viejo Natador thing. I remember waking up every morning, my mom would wake me up at 3:50 to get there at 4:50. She'd have a, piping hot bowl of oatmeal, and my dad would drive a 1977 puke green Volkswagen bus. We'd drive from San Clemente to Mission Viejo, and then he would sleep in the car in a cot while I'd work out morning and night. So once I got my driver's license, they were stoked. But yeah, it was a long time of doing that. So
oh my gosh,
a ton of sacrifice.
Similar. I remember my dad sat in a donut shop in Mission Viejo. Same. I was on a small team, the Saddleback Valley Aquatics, but
Royal Donut, was it Royal Donuts and Burgers?
I don't remember. I'll have to
Oh,
ask him.
oh man, ask your dad about the Royal Special.
But
Yeah.
I know as swimmers we could eat a lot. I did have lots of donuts, and I think I ate like whole pizzas and ridiculous amounts.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
2 a days and all of that. So strong swimming background. Sister got you started. Were you born in Spain? I didn't know that. I mean, I know your last name is Rojas, but I've never asked.
No, I
Spanish
was actually
parent?
no, I was born in Arcadia, California.
Okay.
Yeah, which is somewhere up there near San Marino. You know, you drive
Yeah.
the 210, 5 to the
Mm-hmm.
605 to the 210, and anyway, yeah,
Saturday
great
Night Live's
city.
good.
Yeah, yeah, great city. Loved it. From what I remember of it and all that stuff. Yeah, Arcadia. Then my dad worked in the oil industry, and he's an uber brainiac. Engineering background and all that stuff. But anyway, so my family traveled. They went to all the cool places before I was born, Nicaragua and El Salvador and all that stuff. And then,
Surfing spots, yeah.
yeah, I mean, well, then by the time I was born, we went to Spain, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, Spain's really cool.
Absolutely.
Except for the
Anyway,
drowning incident. I'm sorry about that. But how wild that you remember Mrs. Whatever, her
yeah,
name and her
Mrs.
checkered
Thorne,
pants. Mrs.
absolutely.
Thorne.
Full on checkered pants. And I think they might've even been bell bottoms, but I wish I could ask her, but yeah, absolutely.
Well, such an interesting story because water, we've talked about safety a lot with a lot of different people, and they say the sound of drowning in children is silence. Like
Yeah.
people don't think about that. They think about people panicking and splashing, and that's as adults when we know, but not understanding, oh, you've got Brandy on here and Dan, all these people to
Hey,
see the famous
hey,
Rob
hey.
Rojas.
I see Brandy. I see Corbo on there too. Corbo and I go way back. Yeah. Hey, Corbo.
Awesome. Well, you got a bunch of swimmers here because Brandy was a swimmer. Dan was a
Absolutely.
swimmer at Cal Poly where I went to college. Awesome. So swimming,
Brandy
was
and I
there a
were,
break then in the water sports? I know you started outrigger paddling in the 90s, right? But anything
yeah.
before that?
So back in the, let's see here. So 90, pretty much the summer of 94, 94, 95, 94, I think, was when I started paddling. I got really into it. And it all started in Giles County, Virginia. I spent the summer in southwestern Virginia at a biological station, Mountain Lake Biological Station. Because I was a University of Virginia grad. So since I was doing so poorly, I had to take summer school. Actually, as a matter of fact, I failed a class. So that's why I had to take summer school to make up those credits. But, through failure, we learn, we overcome and all that good stuff. So
Yeah.
anyway, but we did, I think it was called the Giles County Triathlon. And one person canoed, one person rode the bike, and one person ran. And it was a triathlon relay. So anyway, I was chosen to do the canoe, and I had a blast. So that's where it all started. So now
Oh,
summer of
cool.
94.
Oh, so that's even before outrigger. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what got me into outrigger. And then as a matter of fact, my buddy Steve Ayers, I don't know if he's on here or not, but longtime lifeguard, good longtime friend of mine. He had me jump on his OC2. And back then, so this is probably around, 95, 96. He had an OC2. It was made by a canoe maker by the name of John Martin, and it was a Honakai turtle, and the name's very fitting. It was a great boat for the time, but it wasn't the fastest boat, but we had a blast. We did a ton of OC2 races, and so that's where he got me introduced and all the outrigger people, Dana Outrigger, and then it just took off from there. So
Yeah. So you did do some 6-man seasons with Dana?
I did.
Outrigger.
Yeah. Went to paddle the Queen Lily Wakani race in Kona. I hope I pronounced that right. Did the Kona race. Did some multiple Catalina Channel crossings. Did the 9-man sprint season, and also the Ironman seasons. And but the race that pretty much sticks out the most to me was the Texas Water Safari in '97. And that that race pretty much, I still have flashbacks of that race in my head. I only did it once, but a lot of people I know, there are people that I know that have done it 20 years in a row.
Yeah. Was it crazy hard or just so different than what you were used to, or what was it you remember about it?
What I remember most about the Texas Water Safari was, so every time we stopped, we get water, there would be water changes and all that stuff. And the race, I believe, was 265 miles in length. Ooh. So it's basically a 2-day race. And I remember telling myself, okay, at the next water change, I'm getting out of this boat. I'm quitting. I'm over this. It's, yeah. It was hot. I remember at one point at night, there were mayflies all over like literally the air was just just endless mayflies. And I don't know if you know what a mayfly is, but these little white flies. They had the little two tails coming off the back. Fishermen love using them for bait. But they all of a sudden had a full on, I guess they had an orgy, and all of a sudden a bunch of them hatched, and there were mayflies everywhere. I mean, they were getting in your mouth and all that stuff. Anyway, Texas Water Safari, very long race, but the satisfied feeling of finishing it and a sense of accomplishment was huge, so.
Amazing. Well, our focus in these chats is about stand-up paddleboarding. So when did you find it, and kind of what got you hooked? You were way before most of us. You were before 2010 when I started by quite a few years. So who'd you see do it, and why try it?
My very first time I ever saw somebody on a stand-up paddleboard, I was driving down the coast of Laguna, and it was somewhere in the area. Actually, it was somebody was off of Victoria Beach, and I look and I'm like, man, it looks like there's some person standing on the water. What's going on out there, And I looked you, but I had a pair of binoculars in my car and all that, and I'm looking out and I'm like, wow, there's a person out there on a giant surfboard with a giant long paddle, and this was probably, I'd say it was probably like 2004, 2005, maybe,
wow.
If I had to remember right, but, and then I remember our stone guy. So we had a bunch of granite work done in our front, in the front of our house. So our granite guy, he said, hey, Rob, can you hold on to my longboard for a little while? And he had this big, I think it was a Becker longboard, but it's super thick. And so I'm like, yeah, I'll hold on to it for a while. I'll keep it safe. And so I tried stand-up paddling that thing. I still haven't told him this, but
the word's out.
Yeah, no, I tried. I took one of my outrigger paddles, and so I'm standing on this thing, and I look, I'm like hunched over trying.
You're tall too. If you guys don't know Rob, he's very tall. So.
Well, I probably looked really ridiculous, and I felt very ridiculous, and nevertheless, that venture failed, and that was probably around 2005, maybe, and then the 2006 was when I first officially jumped on a stand-up paddleboard, and it was with the Lifeguards for Louisiana event that was put on by a good friend of mine named Jim Birdsell, and the whole purpose for that event was to raise money for playgrounds for a organization called Kids Around the World. And so his goal was to raise funds to build a playground in New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina. So so Jim invited me to go along with, I believe it was me, Chuck Patterson, Mitch Kahn, Rob Pelkey, Scott Dietrich, a bunch of lifeguards and all that, just bunch of watermen. And so we rode dories for a little while, and for a portion of it, and we paddled surf skis for a portion of it, and we even jumped on an OC6, a 6-man outrigger, for a portion of it, and then the very end of it was a stand-up paddleboard portion of it. And I think Chuck and Mitch and Rob, they were all sponsored by Hobie at the time. They got the boards from Hobie, and excuse me. And I remember jumping on that thing the very last 2 or 3 miles, and we finished in La Jolla Cove. I came in, I think I was dead last, but it was just so cool standing up. I'm like, wow, I can stand up. This is awesome. My butt doesn't hurt. Like, it was great.
I was going to say, I assume by then you actually had a real paddle, not using a canoe paddle bent over.
Yeah, I think Chuck had he got a bunch of Kealoha paddles for us back then at the time. Yeah.
So actual stand-up paddle boards and paddles.
Legitimate stand-up boards and paddles. Absolutely.
And what a solid crew. Oh my gosh, that's
Oh,
great.
yeah, absolutely. And as a matter of fact, I believe Blaine Morgan. I believe I took Blaine Morgan's place, and he's one of those incredibly accomplished watermen. And he, for some reason, he couldn't do it. So Jim asked me, "Hey, Rob, can you jump in there and fill Blaine's spot?" And I was like, "Absolutely, I'm honored, man." So it was awesome.
So really cool. You started with a big philanthropic event, and we've talked about how people really do have big hearts in the whole paddling community, and there's a lot of that type
Yeah.
of thing. Um, but then you got into racing. Were all those guys racing too? I mean, I know they
You
did at
know,
some point. What was your first race?
so my very first race was the Dana Point Ocean Challenge. So I know Rob. I mean,
No.
if Rob Pelkey and Mitch, they raced. They've done their fair share of stand up paddleboard races. I mean, but those two guys, Rob and Mitch, and I mean, incredible lifeguard athletes. Ocean lifeguard athletes, and Jim Burtzel as well. I mean, Jim Burtzel and Mitch, they rode dories together, and Jim, I believe, did some races. So Mitch did some races, and Scott Dietrich, another very accomplished lifeguard athlete. Um, they all did races, and of course Chuck Patterson. We don't need to. No, he needs no introduction here, right? So, um, being a big wave surfer, windsurfer, kiteboarder, stand-up paddler, won the first BOP in 2008. So hats off to Chuck, big time. But so what I think but yeah, as a matter of fact, all those guys pretty much raced at some point. But my first race was the Dana Point Ocean Challenge
Cool, which
in
is coming up
2008.
in March. It looks like we're
Yeah,
going to, coming out of this pandemic, we're going strong. And
yeah,
huge shout out. I
absolutely.
know Dan Van Dyke, who just put on Hano Hano, is here. And our outrigger community, if you're not from Southern California, puts on a winter series when they're
Hmm.
not doing their 6-man, 9-man, whatever you call the whole summer main series that invites all watercraft. So we have been really lucky from the beginning. In fact, in a lot of cases, I've talked to some people who there wasn't a category yet officially, but they're like, sure, bring whatever that thing is.
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
think by 2006, 7, whenever you started, was it a category by then?
Oh, you asking Dan or me? Oh, I'm
No,
sorry.
you.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And as a matter of fact, I've got another funny story. I mean, not a funny story. This is a pretty cool story, as a matter of fact. But I remember, going to Dana and seeing this guy had long brown hair, tats like all over his arms and stuff, freaking ripped. He used to skateboard up and down PCH, and so one day I see this guy. I'm on the jetty in Dana Point. I see this guy. He's doing sprints back and forth between his sailboat and the jetty, and he's on a jet black Bark. It was a Bark Expedition style board, and I think it was actually their Bark Coastal Gun. It's like I think it was a 14-footer, just a total bitchin' looking board. And but that person's name is EJ Johnson.
Ah,
And
another
so
OG.
yeah, I mean, just watching him paddle, and I'm just thinking, man, I got to get into this, But especially if I can look like that guy. But but so yeah, hats off to EJ also. So and
Yeah,
and everybody, like when I got into it, like Chuck and EJ, and like I mean all the lifeguards, so, Rob, Mitch, Bertzel, they were all Dietrich, they were all super welcoming. I mean, they were like giving me tips and just like just very very cool. The whole community was Chris
yeah.
Kerner. There's
Mhm.
another OG who's just like always was willing to offer help and advice. Kyle Mochizuki, Eric Tremaine. There's a name. I don't know if a whole lot of people have heard the name Eric
No.
Tremaine, but he was into it way back in the beginning, and he was more doing a lot of surfing. And I'm going to forget people's names here, and I apologize in advance. But
No, you're doing a great job with a whole bunch. I'm going to take a
yeah,
quick detour just because I love this. Mom to my angels. I don't know if you know who that is, but she was saying how awesome this is. Can you race if you're a beginner? And is it this March? Yes, please come join us. There's a whole winter series. In fact, if you want to start earlier, the next one is in 2 weeks at the Newport Aquatic Center called the Hal Rossoff,
yeah,
part again of this series. So that's a inland one, inside the bay for stand up. That would be a great place to start. What Rob just said about community is 100%, 110%. Paddlers are great people. I had the same experience. Yeah, so cool. And I love that you know so many and remember all the names. I'm getting old. I can't remember everybody's name and stuff, but you're just rattling them off.
Oh, I believe me, I have my challenges though at times. So
Yes, we all do. So I don't know what your first name is, Mom to my angels. I'll have to look it up later. That's the funny thing with Instagram names. But yes, come join us. The race community is great. Okay, so first race was Dana Ocean Challenge.
yes,
We mentioned I had to dig up a Battle of the Paddle because our iconic local race you've been a part of for a long time. It changed to Pacific Paddle Games. We are all very sad that we don't have our Doheny Wave race that was usually kind of towards the end of the season in the
yeah.
fall. But some stories about that. What was your first Battle of the Paddle?
So my very first Battle of the Paddle was the 2008 one, and
You were in the first.
yeah,
Awesome.
very first one. And I remember seeing Sparky meeting Sparky. I mean, I always knew who Sparky was, just growing up in San Clemente and all that. But I saw him face to face, you know, and he's like, "Hey, you gonna do the race?" I remember. So backups, like prior to the 2008 Battle of the Paddle, like when word was out, like, "Oh wow, this is gonna be a $10,000 prize," you know, and I mean, people were pumping out boards left and right. I think, you know, like Ron House was pumping out a gazillion boards. And I mean, everybody was like, we got to get this $10,000 prize. Right. And so, you know, and it was funny because like, and it was kind of cool at the same time. It made everybody rise to a different level because everybody's training and everybody's trying to see like, oh, hey, what's that person doing? That person's doing ins and outs in the surf, or that person's, you know, training at 4 o'clock in the morning. They're doing their Uber secret training, secret squirrel training,
That's
basically.
You.
Oh, you know, so anyway, I remember, you know, meeting Sparky for the first time. He's like, "Hey, you going to do the race?" You know, absolutely. You know, like, nice to meet you. You know, nice to meet you, Sparky. And I remember showing up to so, you know, the very first one, it was, I don't think there was any pre-registration. I think you just had to show up there on the spot, bring your $200 cash. And I remember standing in line right next to Aaron Napoleon and his whole family, you know, and, you know, there's another amazing waterman. And, you know, Aaron, I think Riggs was about 2 feet tall, you know, and, you know, I met his wife, and sorry, Riggs, if you're watching this, but, you know,
he started young.
Yeah. And he was, I think he paddled on a bark. It was a little 12-foot bark prone board, little yellow bark prone board. And, that's what he did in that race. And that race, the conditions were hellacious. I mean, I think it was just gnarly north winds and just shore pound, you know, shore break. And that was it. You know, Jimmy Terrell, you know, Jim Terrell. I mean, my friends Brandon Dennis, I know Pelkey did it. I think Mitch did it. Mitch Kahn, and I mean, the list goes on and on and on. But that race, the very first one, was basically just a giant rectangle. And I just remember seeing Chuck and Hebert Lucia. They were just battling it out 1-2, 1-2, 1-2 the whole way. And then, you know, Chuck ended up edging them out. But, you know, and they're obviously, like, their display of sportsmanship was pretty awesome. I remember seeing Chuck running back down to the water, and then he and T-Bear, you know, I think they held hands and they like ran through the chicane again together. But just a cool event, tons of aloha. Yeah. I mean, that spirit, just everybody was stoked. I remember finishing that thing just going, holy crap, man, that was a freaking tough race, you know. I didn't know how to surf a stand-up yet either. So I dug up some old photos of me. It was, I think, a wind and sea photo. And I remember my strategy was going in through the surf was, I'm just going to try and sit down on my butt because I don't know how to surf this board. This thing's a giant, massive board, you know? And so anyway, enough of that. Yeah, it was a great event. That's what started it all, you know?
Yeah. And I do have to throw in, because we usually have listeners from all over the world, that Sparky is Sparky Longley of Rainbow Sandals, who was the original sponsor, or the sponsor the whole time it was called Battle of the Paddle, the main sponsor. Yep. Yeah. And Mom to my angels is Abril. So thank you. And we look forward to seeing you in a race. Yeah. On a paddleboard. Pretty wild, early stuff. So one of the ones I remember, one of the pictures you shared, you did an amazing job at what I think was the biggest waves we ever had. And in my opinion, most challenging is when we had the 1 year at Salt Creek. The last year it was called Battle of the Paddle. And you caught a rat. It was really big, which had mixed. We really made the surf crowd angry because we cut off that weekend when they would have liked to be out there. But wow, there were some great, our judges, people like Dave Bainey, who's on there. He just said, hi, Roberto. And, and Mickey Munoz were, as the judges, got to be out there surfing. But I remember you catching just such a rad bomb going like far left on one of those loops. Do you remember that one? And is that what that picture was from? Salt Creek?
know, the which
Maybe not, but you have a picture where people are going in and out. It's a race and you're catching away.
You know, well, there was one picture that stands out for me was it was after I wiped out, and I hey Luna.
Who's your dog?
Hey, this is Luna. This is Luna. Yeah.
Hi, Luna.
Yeah. We had a rough week with her last week. She got into a bottle of Advil, you know, but she's doing a lot better now. Yeah. All right.
I'm glad she's okay.
All right, go over there. Go chew a rawhide or something. Yeah, no, the Salt Creek was that was an amazing event. You know, tons of fun waves. Caught plenty of good waves and all that stuff. But most notably, I remember taking a pretty good sized wave on the head going out for the distance race. And I was on a 19 and a half foot unlimited, and I'm like, here it comes. but you know, just taking that wave on the head, getting tossed around a little bit, giving the leash a workout. It kind of just got all the jitters out, and like after that, I was like, I'm just going for it, you know. But what a great event. I mean, it's a bummer that it's not around anymore. And I know Salt Creek was tough in that, you know, all the people that really like to surf and like big waves were stoked. And then the people that weren't into big waves
from the Midwest and don't know waves. Yeah.
Yeah. We're like, what do we do? You know, this sucks. So I felt, you know, as while I was happy, but I felt for those people also. But, you know, what an iconic series of events between all the BOPs and the Pacific Paddle Games. I mean, just hopefully we can get that back. I really hope that we'll be able to see some good surf racing again.
Yeah. And I really do feel like Doheny is one of the best venues ever for that. It really is set up for learning the surf race because it is a softer wave. And somehow it seemed to almost every year, not every year, but almost every year, the waves showed up because that's not known as a place that necessarily has waves all the time. You know, it's definitely a learner.
We had a very, very lucky run. And the coolest thing about Doheny is you get that second reef outside, you know, outside the boneyard. And if you're lucky to get one of those waves and get one all the way in, and then, you know, or even, you know, I always remember that hammer buoy, the buoy that was right in front of the hammer, and just people just get drilled, you know, going around that thing. But yeah, it was fun. Good times.
Yeah. Yeah. Great memories. So you're not just a racer, and I do want to talk about unlimited boards and that innovation and everything, but the picture that we used, I just love that picture that Chuck Patterson took of you and Conrad. Cause to me, it's just like, it's gotta be Sano, is it?
Oh yeah. Yeah. It was Sano. Yeah.
So surfing and just loving the water and Ohana and family, talk about like surfing and your board and why you like stand-up paddle surfing and being on the water apart from racing.
So here's what I like about stand-up paddle surfing is I like to move around. Like I just can't that was one of the things about surfing is like you're kind of sitting, you're waiting, like you want to get in your spot and you're kind of jockeying for position and all that stuff. And whereas on a stand-up board, like you can move around, you can see waves come here. And for the record, I hate stand-up surfing around other surfers. That's why I got into it. I want to be able to go like off to different places, and like, you know, you have the advantage of the paddle. You can paddle in the waves, you know, further deep, deeper in the waves. You can, you know, a little crappy wave, you know, you can turn it into a really fun wave on a stand-up paddleboard. But so that was always the fun thing about going down to San Onofre is, you know, going down to Santa, you can go like paddle down south towards Nukes, paddle towards, you know, trails. There's waves everywhere. And that's what's really, really fun about that sport. Just being able to, it feels like you're just moving, you're able to move around a lot more, you know? So maybe it's my ADHD or something like that. I don't know.
No, and I have to say, like, what has happened in Southern California is specifically in Doheny and in Sano, where they regulated that we have to be in a certain area. On paper, I really don't like that. I don't think that's fair, segregating. On the other hand, I love that we go to the end of the road on Sano and you're going to find all your friends and it's a great group of people. And like you said, you can move around as long as the lifeguards are, we love lifeguards, but aren't being too difficult. Having your own area kind of makes it like, oh, this is where all the cool, chill people are. No offense to surfers in general, but I did, I regular surfed first and I learned over there. And there's occasionally old cranky guy who would cut you off when you were learning and stuff, even if you were following etiquette. But but it is important when something's new to respect and learn about the rules of the road and everything. You've been able to share the sport, so you've been great. We're going to talk about Unlimiteds again and your racing, but your son was in it, and as a youth, growing up in that. I know you have a daughter, and she's an excellent athlete, a gymnast. But having Conrad join you on the water must have been pretty special and be a part of the paddle academy here for a while.
And I mean, I have to give my hats off to the paddle academy. Without that program, I don't know if Conrad would be, where he is today, in terms of just his comfort level in the water. I mean, and that, so the paddle academy started off as the Riviera Junior Set program. So Riviera, Mike Eisert and Riviera Paddle Surf, they teamed up together. They started the Riviera Junior Set program, and then Mike, and then Jamie, Mike and Jamie Donnelly, Mike Eisert and Jamie Donnelly, they got the paddle academy. They were working on that together, and then now it's now obviously it's primarily it's Mike Eisert that's taken that program. He's produced a myriad of excellent, a very accomplished stand-up paddle athletes. And I remember back in the old days when Conrad was heavily involved in that program. Now he's a professional ocean lifeguard. He's playing water polo, swimming for the high school. So, I mean, he's a pretty busy kid. And every now and then he and I will go for a paddle together. And he won't have paddled for 6 months. And I paddle every day pretty much. And he'll kick my ass, excuse my language. But that's kick my butt, I mean. But
it's okay.
No, just
no editing here.
Sorry, yeah. But
I better be careful though saying that to you, huh?
No, but my point is I mean, Mike really, both my, and I owe it to both of them, Mike and Jamie. I mean, they were both just excellent, gave the kids such great guidance. I mean, and they had those kids going out in, I mean, conditions that were I'm as a parent just thinking, there's no way they're going to practice today. I mean, there'd be a gnarly south wind, a south swell, just waves crashing up against the jetty over at the Boneyard. If you know Doho at all, Doheny, when there's a south wind, that place sucks. I mean, it's not protected anymore. So, and I mean, right after a storm, I mean, the conditions were just hellacious. And, he had those kids training in everything, every kind of condition, big waves, little waves, wind conditions, really challenge them and put them to the test. So, I mean, now we're at the point now where I feel hey, my son, he's got to look out for me now. I'm not worried about him in the water anymore, So, yeah, excellent program. And, Conrad, he had some many a good years of racing. And Josh, one race that really sticks out with him was the Pacific Paddle Games. And it was just a heartbreaker of a race. It wasn't the junior pro, but it was a junior, the junior race. And there was a ton of good paddlers in it. And he was leading, he was leading the pack. Last buoy turn, all of a sudden he stops, he stopped right by the buoy. And I'm like, what's going on? So I borrowed some of these binoculars. Turned out his leash, the buoy, his leash and board, they got caught in between the, if I'm saying this right, or the line that holds the buoy, caught up with his leash and board. So that set him back a bit. And that's just racing. That's just learning. That's life. You're not always going to have things aren't always fair. Things happens, crap happens, and it was a great learning experience for both him and I. But it was also a heartbreaker at the same time,
Yeah. Oh, good for Conrad. Yeah. And great to hear all the stuff that he's involved with and that he has become such a waterman from this base. Plus stand-up paddling, even if you're not racing, it's such a lifelong, it's something you can do your whole life. There's certain sports that you won't do again after you finish doing them. but definitely this is not one of them. He can
Yeah.
pick up a paddle and a board anytime in life and enjoy it with future family, enjoy it
Yeah.
competitively for fitness, again, blah, blah, long
No,
list.
absolutely. Absolutely. I'll never quit,
Yeah. Found your joy. And I think you said that like now you don't race much. Although you should have been at the last one. Brad Rambo showed up and did
I
really
know.
well
Oh,
on
that's
Riviera.
awesome.
We're like, oh, it still exists.
Right, right on. If Dan Van Dyke's still on here, I mean, that really, the Hano Hano is just, it's an amazing event. And I was really bummed to not be able to go. Obviously life happens. And, AKA the dog.
Yeah, right.
As a matter of fact, we were like, after many trips to the vet, that last week and all that, yeah, we were kind of concerned we were going to lose her last week, but anyway, like last Friday night was a tough night for her. But she's better now, and all's good. But all's right with the world. But
Yeah.
anyway, kind of had to make, it's called balance, and
Yeah,
but I'd like to be
absolutely.
there for next year's Hano Hano for sure.
Yeah, phases of life.
Yeah,
Well, you
of
talked
life.
about other OGs like you who started super early and got SUP racing going. But one of the things I think of you is sort of just the champion on the unlimited class, which we don't see as much so often. But it was the whole idea was to be innovative. Like let's have an unlimited class where you can ride anything, kind of. So talk about that and like how you went to that unlimited board. Was it the Ohana
Yeah,
company? Or
yeah. Ohana paddleboards. And here's the cool thing about the unlimiteds is the unlimited can take an average Joe and turn them into a pro. That rhyme?
Yep,
No,
it did.
no,
Joe
but
to Pro.
yeah, no, that's the unlimited. It's no, it's in all seriousness. Russell Coble and Bob Reed, they are the ones that really got me involved in the racing aspect of it. They built my first unlimiteds, and they really were they really were ahead of the time. I mean, they just with the way from the rockers to the rust to the the rails to the overall outline of the boards, and they were very very committed to just trying to build a fast unlimited stand-up paddleboard. And there were a lot of other board makers at the time that I mean, from Craig Richmond to there was another guy that had a good unlimited that EJ paddled, Tony Mueller. I know he built some boards. Craig Richmond, Joe Bark, Dave Dom, who's I'm not sure if he was building boards back then, but I know he's building some amazing unlimiteds now. And then we've got guys on the East Coast like Bob Blair, who's from Speedboard, who's building some pretty incredible molded unlimiteds. Speedboard Nello, he was doing a collaboration with Nello. But bottom line is the unlimited. I've always had a passion for it. It's the shape that allows it allows more. The longer the board, the more room you have for error and innovation, and you can make little tweaks here, make little tweaks there. There's more tweaks on an unlimited that you can make versus a shorter board like a 14 or a 12.6. And every board has their place, in the world. And it's I still have my unlimited, and I love going out and paddling it, but it's absolutely and obviously then you take the whole downwind situation like Hawaii and all that,
and crossings, right?
Yeah, their unlimiteds are very much a huge part of what they're doing out there, and they're racing, especially on the prone side of things, throwing paddle boards and doing the downwind style racing on the stand-ups. They're very much so racing on unlimiteds. And unlimited basically, unlimited, anything goes, right? Anything over 14, that's I think
So
Thomas Maximus had
different lengths. How did you guys decide what was the best length for stand-up?
So I remember my very first unlimited was an 18.6, and I don't know why that length came to be. I don't know if it had something to do with the blank. So I'd have to ask a shaper that question. But then somehow, somewhere, we came to this magic number of 19.6. So we were paddling, a 19.5 foot board, and And then, like, for example, Thomas Maximus, I know he had a 21 footer made. But I think that might have been a
To
little too
beat
much
you.
forward. And it just, that's the thing. We're always just playing with we're just all playing with just innovation, trying to see what works and what doesn't work. Now it seems like the new Unlimited is the foil board, these downwind foil boards. And they're absolutely crushing these crossing records, like on these downwind foil boards.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, 19.6, I was racing on a 19.7 for a while, and just to make it 1 inch longer than 19.6, but I think the bottom line, it's all about water line. There's that fine balance. Hey, you want to have water line, which helps give you speed, but again, too much water line, may hurt your speed. And so it's the Unlimiteds. It's definitely.
Yeah, there's still a place, like you said, especially in a lot of specialty races. And it's not that it wasn't a great category, but it never really grew. And one of the big issues we had in early stand-up paddling is we're still young now. We didn't have enough people to fill all the different board classes, age groups. And so there definitely was somewhat of a bringing things together. And I know at some point you were racing a 14 just because there wasn't always that unlimited class. But
No, for sure. I mean, so I remember, I think it was the 2009 Battle of the Paddle distance race, which was that was the first year where they had the distance race, right? And I was either 2009 or 2010, but there were probably, I want to say it was close to 20 or 30 Unlimiteds in that distance race, that 10-mile race. And that was for stand-up paddling, that was like one of my most memorable races. It was, you had Travis Grant, Danny Ching, you had Connor Baxter was on an Unlimited. You had people from all over the world. They were, a lot of the board makers out here were, letting people borrow their Unlimited.
Yeah.
And I'm leaving out a freaking ton of names. It's obviously Maximus, Thomas, and like I said, I'm leaving out a ton of names here, and for that I apologize.
No.
But
I didn't expect you to remember everybody, but you've been really great with helping us remember people whose names we know, and then some.
Yeah, Jamie Mitchell. He was on Unlimited for that race, I believe, and it was a period of time where the Unlimiteds were really, the flatwater Unlimiteds were really, really big, and then and then it kind of, there was some. I'll be honest, there was some grumbling in whether it be in the industry or other racers that kind of were like not too happy about the Unlimiteds being in that distance race. So, I guess that's just life, but
it is kind of how those things go. I hadn't thought that much about it, but I think part of it at the very beginning, there weren't very many production boards. So almost everybody was getting a custom board. So why not get it to be the fastest? And all that innovation early on helped us all down the line as companies moved to, many still make custom, of course, but there's a lot that don't, that only have production boards. So I'm sure part of it was industry and, like you said, the blank and the size. Part of it was travel, thinking, there's a lot of females in the sport. Can I carry it? Will it be heavy enough? Does it fit on my car? Transportation and those kinds of things. A little bit more challenging, although, you come from outrigger background, so people have their OC1s and surf skis that are really long.
For sure.
Yeah. But thank you for being part of that and I know you worked with a lot of, giving your feedback after a race about what worked and what didn't. And all of that really moved our whole sport along, all of that early stuff in this area and some of the areas that were really hotbeds for early stand-up paddling.
Sure.
So
Oh, no, go ahead. Yeah.
I just wanted to, again, go back to the picture because did I say Chuck Patterson took it? I'm sorry. We forgot to put that in, which he's a great photographer.
Yes. Yeah,
but
absolutely.
Again, to me, that's just such the spirit of paddling. The picture we used of you and your son and you're tapping paddles like you're high-fiving as he surfs by and you go out over the wave. That just to me is so representative of the wonderful community that we have. It's funny that you worked with Ohana, but we use a lot of the Hawaiian terminology and a lot of that kind of aloha and love stuff that comes out of the whole outrigger. But I think that's felt in a lot of places. So paddling, one of the things I think of you, and I have to mention, is headlamp. You are, you paddled, maybe still, I don't know, but used to paddle all the time in the dark before sunrise. Talk about that and your job, because you have a really interesting job with, I know, kind of a different schedule.
You know, it was, back then it was, you know, I was doing a lot more headland paddling back, you know, back then. And now now I enjoy my sleep a little bit more, but you know, every now and then I get a wild hair and I'm like, hey, I'll do a 3 o'clock in the morning paddle, you know? And, but you know, there's something about paddling at night. You know, it's that soft glow, you know, you've got that, there's like basically an orb of light, you know, created by the headlamp. It's sort of like your body's on hyper focus, you know, all your senses, because you can't see as well. So your sense of hearing, your sense of smell, your sense of just what's going on around you. It's sort of, everything just becomes amplified at night, you know, and it's, there's something about it. It's like putting blinders on a donkey when the donkey's, or a mule, you know, when they're pulling a wagon. There's just something about night paddling that it's just a beautiful time to be out on the water, you know, and usually when I'm paddled at night, it was usually inside the harbor, you know. Every now and then I'd venture outside and you know, if it was pretty calm, but yeah, I mean, the nighttime, it's a very, very beautiful time to paddle. I mean, definitely have a good, if you do paddle at night, you know, make sure you have a light on you, and, you know, make sure you have all your necessary safety equipment, and just know what's around you, you know, be aware. So,
and do know, because I know sometimes we talk about safety and paddle with a buddy. Rob has quite a background. We've talked about a lot of it, but your job is on the water. So talk about what you do, because I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah, I mean, you know, currently I work in, you know, wildlife law enforcement. And, so we do, you know, we work offshore, and we check, we conduct, you know, commercial and sport fishing enforcement and so on and so forth. And that's, and that, you know, kind of goes back to my draw to the water, you know, like ever since a little kid, you know, watching shows like Flipper and Gentle Ben, you know, so Flipper. For those that don't know, Gentle Ben was a story about a bear and a boy that lived in the Florida Everglades, and dad was a game warden, you know, and Flipper was a similar deal, 2 brothers, and they grew up in Florida, and dad was I think that dad was I don't think he was a game warden. I think he was more like a constable, but he kind of did everything, you know, but so it was just, you know, just that outdoor lifestyle was always something that was a draw to me, you know, just having a biology background and always loving catching snakes as a kid, and, you know, catching frogs, and just like being out in the ocean and being out in the water and getting dirty. And, you know, for me, it's just hard enough to sit behind a desk to do my taxes or pay a bill, you know? So
are you out on a boat a good percentage of the time, I would assume?
Yeah, for the most part, I'm you know, I work on a boat, and we got a patrol boat off of you know, out of Dana Point Harbor that we work on, the patrol boat Thresher, and we go to the offshore islands, and Catalina Island, San Clemente Island, Santa Cruz, or not Santa Cruz, but San Nicolas, and you know, every now and then we'll venture out to Cortez Bank, and we'll see what we run into, you know, and but it's just, you know, being able to look at, you know, being able to look outside and see the ocean and see what's. I was like, hey, that's my office, you know, so.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, I really like it.
I'm agreeing with John Clark, who's on here as Tandem Surf. Rob is the coolest waterman. You're handsome and charming. From John.
Hey, John.
And then quite a few other people have agreed with you about those TV shows, loving Flipper.
Yeah, I love, yeah, Sup Nixie, I love Flipper. Yeah, Northern Visions. Yep, I love that show as a kid. Right on. And yeah, no, it's just a great show. You know, I wish they were still on. I don't know if we could find them, or if there's maybe they're on Netflix or something like that. I've never looked.
I'm sure they are. There's so many channels these days. I think there's the ones that play the old stuff, the good old stuff. It should be. If not, let's get it back online. Yeah. So water person your whole life. We always talk about the blue mind. There's now like scientific evidence that we are addicted to water, and it's a good addiction, and what it does, like you talked about. You're focused when you went out at night by yourself, but that's also a meditative state or a flow state.
Mm-hmm.
and how good it is for our health. Oh,
Yeah.
Neil Norton is mentioning Sea Hunt. Do you remember
Sea
that one?
Hunt. Oh, you know what? I've never,
Yeah,
I,
Neil.
I never saw Sea. I've heard of Sea Hunt, but I never watched an episode. I need to. That's on my to-do list. Thanks, Neil.
Okay, we're gonna see if that one's out too. We need a whole bunch. The liquid fix. So true,
All right.
Negative Vision. That's kind of, yeah, what it is, our liquid fix. Well, great stories, and I know you have a ton more. We're getting towards the top of the hour. Maybe some more with favorite races and people. Did you try, or maybe just about like, is there still, you've done a lot with water. Are there places you'd love to go still and surf or race or paddle in the world, or any type? Have you tried some of these new things? You talked about foiling, winging. You know, there's a lot of offshoots and directions people are going.
No, absolutely. I mean, there's tons of room for innovation out there. I mean, I've done a little bit of foiling. My son Conrad, he's much better foiler than I am. But you know, I'm at the point where I'm just like, hey, you know, I'm cool with just paddling right now. For me, it's just getting out on the water every day and getting my paddling. Um, but you know, as far as places that I've been, you know, I have to say I'm eternally grateful to the sport and the opportunities that it's given me. You know, and I'm eternally grateful to all the people and companies that have put their support into me and faith into me in the past. You know, the past and the present. Being able to go to places like Peru for the ISA games in 2012, that was being able to go to paddle around Manhattan Island. You know, that was for the sea paddle.
Oh
which
yeah.
was which was I mean, talk about such a cool event and just an opportunity to go see New York City, you know, to going out to Utah, you know, to racing out there. And you know, a couple of people that I'd like to mention, you know, there's some fixtures that are in the sport that, you know, like, you know, we've got Mama C out in Dana Point Harbor. She's always been such a huge supporter of the sport and everybody. And then, you know, Betsy and Bob Reisner, you know, rest in peace, Bob. But they were just, you know, Betsy is an amazing person. And, you know, Betsy and Bob, you know, they took paddlers. They had people stay at their home in Utah when we went out for the HCO Overdrive races. And just, I mean, they were people that they drove all over the country to go do races. I mean, from places like the Carolina Cup to the Key West Classic I mean, I got to race around Key West. You know, that was I've never been to Key West. I never thought I'd ever go to Key West. And then all of a sudden I'm flying down there to go do a race, you know, around Key West, you know.
I know.
And
I hadn't even been to Florida before paddling, and I know.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, so it's just, I mean, the sport has been the sport and the industry, and everybody's been, you know, I'm just, like I said, I'm eternally grateful, you know. So.
Yeah. Well, we are grateful for you and your stories and all that you've shared, and you have brought so much to our sport. Appreciate you joining me today. We still need to work on, at some point there's going to be, I know we're only like 15 years old or something, but the history of stand-up paddleboarding, and we need people like you who will be able to help us document all those early days, and we're a part of it. So thank you, Rob, and I look forward to seeing you on the water, and we will stay in touch. And everybody, Rob Rojas, if you want to follow him and his escapades, it's fun because he's on the water, not only getting out paddling, but with his job, you often have some interesting stuff to share about some island that you're on or some boat that you're getting on. Really enjoy that, and a good sense of humor too.
Thank you, Kristen. Thank you for having me on. Thank you, SubConnect, and Kristen Thomas. Thank you very much. Really appreciate you guys having me on.
Take care. See you soon. And remember, everyone, that this goes immediately to IGTV, and then it is recorded and will show up on YouTube and a couple places. So if your friends missed it, you want to send them over.
Right on.
Bye, Rob. Hi to the whole Rojas family.
I will. Take care. Thank you.